I'm sorry, I don't understand. Ah. Entiende. Entiendo.
Okay, this is the Sagewood Budget Workshop. Got one of the Finance Committee, Jason's here, and staff, and 3 board members present, and myself. It's cast, but it's not refreshing, so give me just a second to fix that part of it. I think it disconnects if you don't do it quickly, so. Waiting. Reconnect.
We found some setting that was messed up in there.
Yeah, the multicast setting, that's what causes it. It's an update that Ubiquity did. I warned him about it before he did it, but still got missed, so it's okay. All right, let's see if we can get in here and get this thing to work correctly again. I don't know if we need to watch on Netflix, but it looks like that's what's running it now. Come on, guys, it's ridiculous. You connect with, can you connect to the Chromecast network? Right now, it's not letting me connect to the network. It disconnected me. Reboot everything. Yep. There it goes. Okay.
Did you get it?
Yeah, it just connect the phone, so we can get the cast again, and we'll be good to go. All right, Chrome. Not a fan of this. You cast, Lighthouse available, sources, cast screen. All right, looks like I refreshed. See if it stays with me when I'm moving the screen around. Come on. Not refreshing. Okay, well. Try one more time here, just not refreshing the device. Reset it. There it goes, yay. All right, it's live and it's working, thank God. Okay, so going back to what John said last week is that, I start from the actual finances that came out of the system, and I updated it through September because the September has been reconciled and sent out. So we're looking at Sagewood here. And the totals for that, and then I've made some modifications on the right side here that I want you to pay attention to. Anything that's colored other than blue is something that I've modified with some notations to try to spend some money before the end of the year. The 43,000 that you're seeing at the top there, that is to remove and replace mulch. I took a guess at that. Apparently it's going to be 45.
Right.
So, but then I've got some improvements on here. This is to include the timers that we've already contracted for. So if it's green, we're contracted to it partially or fully contracted. So it's a liability, not just in here for that number, but we haven't spent the money yet. Electrical and internet, the internet network to connect everything together. So that's $25,000 for the timers, and then another 20 grand for internet connections and some electrical that we have to do.
I reached out to you and got them today, and I'm gonna I asked them to meet you next Wednesday with,
An electrician,
the electrician.
that's great.
Next Wednesday after meeting.
So there's not a whole lot of things in here that I've added to this budget to try to get it to use up some of their money. And there's some things we could probably do, but that's the only real addition that we haven't already obligated ourselves was the 43,000. The bottom line on this, all the expenses added up to, $339,000. And with that 43, it'll leave an overage of about $2,800, $2,889 before it's over. So that means the budget was fairly concise, and we did a pretty good job of following it throughout the year, which I'm thrilled about, actually. So there's not a huge surplus. There's not a huge overage of any kind. There's no real craziness in here, and that includes the fact that we had a deficit last year that was carried into this year, which is $40,000.
So that also, that 28,000 doesn't take into account hurricane.
It's this,
Could
it's
come
not
in.
this,
Yeah.
it's the owl.
That's correct, but there's still, that's why I've got that $43,000 at the end of the year. Just
Right, that's it. They've got a cushion to get them through the hurricane season, and then there'd be a slight over. I think that's.
That's,
Can you turn the owls on? Nobody online can see you.
oh, yeah. Put the yellow up here, right? Cameras on which side? They can't see the screen?
No, I can't see.
The camera's on top of the.
Yeah, I know, but they can't see the screen.
Not if you're talking.
They can't see the screen at all.
Okay. All right, so, in any event, that's something I didn't account for, but in any event, that's the numbers at the end of the year basically are pretty consistent. So with those numbers, I take those expenses and I start out with a column that's the forecast, because the last 3 months are estimated. So those numbers are down the right side. The approved budget's in the center here. That's what we approved last year. And then the proposed budget's on the left side. So as you go down, you can kind of see the comparison between, what we actually spent and what we approved. Some of it went way the heck over, like we made money on the processing fees this year. As you can see, that's $19,050 compared to the $3,000 we budgeted. So we budgeted extra fees for that area of $6,800, and we actually took in $30,000. So clubhouse rentals. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the master. Sorry about that. Let me go to Sagewood. That area didn't have as big of an overage, but it still had some. We basically anticipated about $2,100 on some, in some areas that ended up being a lot less income, and then some that were $150 that ended up being $1,650. So it kind of balanced itself out. The big difference is that we had interest of almost $11,000 on the reserves. That's a big chunk
In Sagewood.
in Sagewood alone.
Sagewood alone. If they can't see the screen, giving them some of the key date number.
But we're only talking about Sagewood, right?
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm just clarifying.
Can you expand the page so it takes up the whole space?
I can, then I'm gonna be able to control the cast if it's not like that. A little better?
Yeah, it's.
Okay, so the So we did have a small prior year carryover, as you saw, that I put the bottom, that's that green box on there. It's 2889 is the predicted carryover that we have, a small amount of money compared to the deficit we had last year, which was $40,000 and change. So that makes a huge dent in the fact that the dues end up being not compensating for that deficit, if you can make that out. Contingency is always in here, but this year I based it on 12% contingency and then I round up to make it even dollars for the dues. So last year we did a 10% contingency and it turned out to be a little tight for this particular budget. So that's why I did that this time. Anything in yellow are fixed expenses. In other words, I've added some variant for changes in the electrical or what have you, but basically we were stuck to those numbers what we spent on electricity and so forth from the years before. The phone is for the gate. They have a $43 a month gate fee for cellular connection for the gate. And then the internet is proposed. So anything in blue is proposed at this point. When we get the timers put in and we connect them, we'll have to have an internet feed over in that space. And that's based on $94 and change a month for an internet fee. So the other blue areas are all up for discussion. Obviously, taking some of the extra things from the controllers and reallocating them to improvements and repairs within the property. I've added those numbers kind of randomly to still leave room for some tree removal and some tree trimming because some dead wood that needs to come out for sure. And then some improvements like grass repair or plant repair. So that's all in the maintenance of the landscaping. So that's where those blue numbers come from. So that's a total of repairs for $30,000 and improvements $20,000, tree trimming $10,000, and tree removal $10,000.
Sean, can you remember this, please?
Not right now. I can't. I have to.
The reason I asked is that if you email it to me, I can screen share and so. Because right now, all we see is the nostrils. Better is than
Don't just go to the top and then jump.
screen sharing.
Sure that I got the right one. Yep. See you. Okay. Okay. Should be there. You want to get it up? Okay. So moving down from where we were at, where irrigation, the contracted services, actually Ballinger, the irrigation contractor is the only one that gave us an updated proposal for 2024 thus far. So that's an accurate number. So that's why it's not got a notation on it or a red mark on it. I made $3,000 of the regular repairs and then improvements, which include MP rotor replacement, which helps save water and actually get better distribution for the grass. The nozzle gets changed to a rotor that has fingers as opposed to spray, which actually ends up blowing through the air more and hitting the grass better. So it basically is just an improvement that we had talked about with Tom and Gail a couple times already. So those are the variable numbers that we've added for discussion. Everything else is pretty much cut and dried. It didn't change the budget in some areas at all. We spent we're going to spend shortly 74.97.50 for pressure cleaning. Sorry,
14,000.
Yeah, I mean-
Put out.
right.
Okay.
So it's gonna be $14,000 total, but, or almost 15 actually, but that's what we've already spent, so, I can actually update that number. We discussed not pressure cleaning every year, but I left it in the budget.
This year, I guess that it was done right, like the month before I started driving through, it definitely needs it already this year. So if they don't need it next year, possibly we won't, but at this point, it looks like it's gotta be done.
Well, with that taken out, obviously it changes the due structure a little bit. I meant to put 14,000 here, but put an extra zero. I'll put the 14,000 in there, and then
Let me clarify, is it 7,500 every time we do it?
this is the deposit. There's a balance due when it's completed. I just didn't put the full number in yet. I can do that.
So
very
it's
quickly.
14,000 every time they pressure off. Right. Okay.
Yeah, to do all their sidewalks
Got
and
it.
driveways, because they don't even have, they have
The houses-
concrete sidewalks in the houses, right?
Yes, but the driveways.
Would it make more sense if we put it at 16, just in case they do like a 10% extra, or come out of?
Sure. I'm okay with an increase on it, not a problem. Okay, so, that's the only other, let's just leave that as a variable. I'll mark it so we can use that as a, jumping off point. That's the end of the whole maintenance section that you see there. Now, you'll also notice that there's a tax section because of the revenue we made with the interest in those things. We have to pay some taxes on it, so that's $3,816 from this year. I typically would estimate this as well. I haven't put that number in, but I will real quickly while we're talking here to make sure that we have allotment for that taxes next year.
Refresh my memory, how much did they earn on taxes?
It's 30%.
No, I ended 30%. How much, so what did they earn?
Oh, up here, last year, income for,
This year.
This year it's gonna be.
yeah, this year currently, the total,
So it'll be about 30% of that.
right, it's actually the total above this because the prior carryover doesn't count, but yeah, it's like $10,000 and change.
And we assume interest rates will stay about the same, so that's. Yep.
Yeah, so that should be a pretty good number. And then, of course, we're adding to the reserve, which is a larger number each month than we have in the past. That number that we're drawing interest from is going up exponentially. So it's actually a pretty good deal. We're earning 3.6% right now. Okay, moving down to the next section. So
Let me clarify, so the line C we're looking at is what your proposed budget is, correct?
yes,
But there's no money in for income taxes there.
right. That's I left that up by accident, but I can put it in real
Oh.
quickly. Just if you want to give me a second, I'll add it in.
$4,000.
Well, no, I actually do it based on the estimate. So
Even on the carryover,
no, you don't use the carryover.
oh, that's just highlighted green. Good enough.
The green is just because it's coming from the previous budget. Okay, so that would be the number based on the calculation. Okay, so the good thing about the reserves is they're fixed for a while until the next reserve study, which will probably be year after next, so no changes there at all. And we funded it exactly like it was supposed to be, and so it's, that's how much we've put in the reserve this year is $100,000 and change. And we will do the same next year. I'd love the expense here to balance out the column, but we did have some reserve expense and reserve income from the repair that we did there, so that kind of washes, but basically that's in here. We don't have any predicted expenses coming for next year. So the bottom line on this is that it ends up being a variant of a negative 2369 at the moment, which is a reduction. So the dues would round up to 376 as opposed to 399. Unless you can find something that has to be fixed that you need to spend money on.
Tell me again what this general component expense is.
We have 5 different components. One of them is the general, which would be general repairs, and we spent $6,300 on a pump repair and something that was spent on it. Okay.
23%, the one that you sent us is 3044, is that because you made a small changes
Yeah.
during the meeting, okay, just for the people.
Yeah, that's why I didn't want to send a hard
It's
copy.
okay, it's a draft, everyone needs to understand, this is a workshop, and all this draft.
The whole point is that this is a live copy, so I can actually make changes, so we can work through it, and then I would publish it afterwards typically.
Very-
So that's what this is. I made a color keys on here. There's no real keynotes on here, other than the fact that I've got the rotors on there. I'll put a keynote on that, but this is pretty straightforward. It's not a huge change at all.
So they're looking at a reduction of about $23.
And unless we can figure out a way to spend money to keep it the same, that's always an option.
This is one thing we have on the.
I'm sorry, I can't,
This is one thing we have.
Were there any expenses in that community this year that we could not say?
we didn't pay for a lot of personal requests to do landscaping. That now I've put a big budget in to take care of that for this year. So, yes, I would say we didn't do some things, but many of them were very individual.
We were
That's
digging
the
out-
best way to say that, yeah,
And that's what we were digging out of the hole from previous year.
yes.
Now we're at the level and.
So there's money to be spent for, I put $40,000 into improvements that we can throw into things that need to be done for the neighborhood.
So I was starting to say there's some areas that do need additional landscaping and trimming and definitely more trees.
And before I did start putting these together, I drive each area and look myself, because I want to know what seems logical, because last time you told me, I made some judgments just by what I could find. I passed it by Patty earlier today, and we seem to be on the same page.
And this is just doing them all. This is doing everything. Plus 40.
Pressure washing and mulching,
Which is.
and that's removing the old mulch and putting new mulch in this year to get a new base, which will make it easier to mulch next year and so forth and so on.
And that's what we. 46,000 for irrigation. And that's guaranteed. $46,000 for irrigation last year. And we are not experiencing that this year, so. Improvements of $40,000.
That's the timers.
Yes.
To answer that question, it's the timers that we are going to be installing in the next 3 months. We had to wait till the end of the year to have the money in the bank to pay for them. So we'll be installing those. So that budget is being reappropriated into improvements and your reduction.
If we take $10,000 out of the 40,000, can we just play with that number?
Sure.
Just to play with that. number.
Uh-huh. Let me go back to the end of the blue. That's why they're there, so we can just kind of play with them. So if I take out improvements and make it 10,000.
Mhm.
And it's not gonna make a big dent, but at the bottom of the spreadsheet, you'll see that it made a $34 difference. So it's a $5 difference for every 10 grand you spend.
Is that per year? Or per month? $5 difference per year.
It's a $5 difference between the 27 we had earlier and the 34 we have 9. So that's actually for the dues each month.
Got it. So that's a $34, right there, that's a $34 reduction each month.
Each month.
For the year.
Each month. Yes. The variant just takes last year's dues and subtracts this year's dues from it.
Once the spreadsheet is made, it's like. Much.
So when I do you'll see the other ones don't have references on them, but when I do this, I do a rounding calculation as well. It's kind of hard to see this in small, but I take the old dues, compare it to the new dues, see the percentage of change, so we can present that too. That's the first sheet on the budget when I publish it. So, and it rounds up to get to the nearest round dollar to make it each payment wise. So, I mean, you could cut that back more, but you have to remember that before we did this, the year before, we spent $40,000 on landscaping repair. Easily, and that's without the train. So that's what we have in here. We have repairs of $30,000 and improvements of $10,000, and that's the same number we spent the year before.
And that's the thing, we won't have as many because we're gonna need those personal improvements, the drainage, the road maintenance, so that's not gonna be.
And with the sprinkler timers and so forth, we should have better control of the watering, and that should make it a big difference for the sod replacement, which is where we spent the most money on the year before.
Yes.
So that should be a really good jumping off point. there's still the contingency in there, and that's for hurricanes and things that went up in price and whatever else falls apart, right? So that contingency number is $40,000.
Can we bring that to 10%?
We can?
I'm just trying to bring it a little bit down for the homeowners. I know that's tight, that's not easy. Take it with my blessing.
Okay, let's take a look at it that way. That's gonna be copied over, and there we go. Okay, now that is a 10% variant. That'll bring it down, not a whole lot more, but a couple dollars.
I like, why are we trying to do what we're doing? Not less.
We're trying, we're
I'm
trying to
sorry?
lower the fees for the.
Trying to find a way to reduce it.
Okay, I think that's the wrong approach. I think we need to approach it not in terms of how we do that, because what do we have in there that seems high for what we're doing, as opposed to lowering something just to lower it? That would be the same as raising it just to raise it. I'm sorry, I just, because I think differently. And I feel like we're.
Well, all of
going
these
in-
variable numbers are shooting in a can, basically. These
I
are best
understand,
guess.
but I understand, but we came in, we're 839, 217 because one of them was we made more money this year than we did, so that's unusual, right?
Yep.
Interest rates may go down. So, it's one of those things where, I think we should look at what we figured, and it goes back to the conversation we had last week. We created a budget for the master at a certain level, because that was what we expected over time. We would need to do, fund the reserves, take care of contingency, make improvements. And so I don't know why we're diverging from that. And I would assume we did it with the same case here in Sagewood, just to work a number a certain way. I think we should be looking at what we should spend. I'm sorry.
And we haven't changed any of the spending at this point. So what we just changed was the contingency is all.
But the contingency's there because of what you anticipate they need to spend.
No, the contingency is there for what you anticipate not to spend. Basically, it's a catch-all for anything that we don't know is coming.
Well, that's something you're expecting you may need to spend,
Right.
but you don't know what the item is, right?
Correct,
So, I
but
mean,
last year we.
I'm being argumentative a little bit, I'm sorry, but. And I feel I have to say this, I think we should be careful of working what we think we need to spend,
Can we just go to what you're suggesting as opposed to describing it?
not doing what we're just doing.
Well, what did we just do?
You just change numbers to increase a reduction.
No, I changed the contingency and it does increase the
For
production
what purpose?
because it was 10% last year and she asked me to put it to 10% for this year.
Oh, I didn't realize why it wasn't 10%.
I made it 12% because the inflation rates and the cost of everything seems to be going up that way.
All right, okay.
So we were putting it back to where we started last year. Keep it
I'm
consistent.
sorry, I didn't hear that, so.
I'm glad to put it back. I don't have a problem. It's
Okay.
fairly simple.
I do think the other thing he's referring to is the cost of repairs. We just arbitrarily reduced them by $10,000.
Yes, that one we did do.
And we don't really have any idea of what kind of cost we're doing there. There may be five, I guess it's homeowners that request improvements, or there could be 55. But each one of them could be $200 for repairs, or there could be 2,000 for repairs.
No, understood. I think the best thing is to gauge what we did last year or the year before for that matter. When you're looking at landscape maintenance, we spent $6,000 last year on repairs and $3,100 on improvements. This is four times on that. Even with that reduction we just made.
But comparing it to last year, in one way is we were obviously deferring a fair amount because we didn't have any money. So I don't know where.
Right, so the
I
year
guess,
before we did $40,000.
is-
Yeah,
If you could say that we expect to have 20 homeowners request some maintenance that's gonna cost us $500 a piece. And whatever that number comes up to there, that's our target, and we have something to measure against right now, it's just a lot of money.
no, I
And
understand.
you're gonna tell us when we get to the point where.
To move it along, I don't have a preference. I basically was just doing what Patty asked me to at this moment. So if you guys think that it needs to be the way I originally guessed on it, I'm glad to say that.
Do you agree with what I just said?
I do to an extent. I think that this is a very padded budget at this point. From my experience, one of the things that we were trying to do is curb the extra spending. And the reason I mentioned the lawn replacement, we replaced so much sod that year that cost us so much money that the reason for us spending the money on the irrigation was to prevent that from happening. So we wouldn't spend that money, not just keep spending it. So that's why I think it's padded. I think we've moved the money around to an extent. I think it's good. I think it's a good jumping off point. Do we have, I was just trying to think in those landscaping meetings, the things that we always deferred off were $400 or $500 items each time.
Right.
There were 100 of them. There's
There's
only 76 homes.
Right.
So that's kind of where I'm coming. I support the fact that I'd like to try to give, I'm kind of torn between a couple places, John. I am not a believer in reducing the dues unless there's just a huge surplus, which we have to do in Sandpiper Press because they sold a bunch of houses at the end and their revenue went up exponentially. Makes sense. But lowering the dues drastically each time gives a false hope of what's going to happen next year. Then we're going to have to raise it again. And that's what John's trying to say is that doesn't it get kind of silly after a while?
Right, and I'm totally agree, but because we raised the dues so much last year, we went from 196 to 399, that was a huge increase.
And it was to offset the major difference in our reserves,
Exactly.
major difference. Now we've stabilized that, stabilized the deficit.
And then
So
we
is
have
it
the
possible
fund.
that we could save them a little bit? Yes. Do we want to save them too much? No, I want to make sure there's money to cover what they need.
And
Fair
I
enough.
agree.
Fair enough. That,
That makes
that
sense.
clarifies it for me.
Now, has there been any increase with the new contract with Sunrise in regards to each individual?
I put 12% on here.
Yeah, and that's probably gonna be a lot, because that contract actually is not gonna go into effect until March or April of 2020.
Because I think it's what, like $85-87 just for them to respond to each individual service request for a homeowner, just for a start.
From Sunrise?
Yeah, that's what they've been showing on some of the invoices, that opening something is like $88 to go over to, take a look at a homeowner's request for, trimming their bushes.
That's,
I don't see the invoice with it at JP, so I mean, they do this profit on it. But that's the kind of stuff I need to know about, because I'll have that. If they're there once a week.
So it
Or then it's up and
makes sense that, it's
I
like
just
the mall is
feel
like
a
42,000.
little uneasy, and I know we don't have all the figures, but $30,000 for repairs,
that's repairs just for landscaping too,
just landscaping. And,
So that includes the irrigation.
no, it doesn't. The irrigation separate,
$3,000.
irrigation separate section below.
Oh,
So, other than saying we just made it lower than it was before.
Right.
None of the numbers that are up there are matching anything close to $30,000. So do we have an underlying calculation to show how we arrived at that number other than just change it?
Underlying, you're talking about for the numbers you're seeing in the improvements?
So for the repairs and improvements.
Right.
And the trimming stays about the same as it was last year, assuming we've already fixed some of the stuff that we don't have to replace.
And last year was 20,000, this year's 10, last
Right.
year the tree trimming was 16, we've got 10, so it's a reduction in both cases.
Right.
The improvements, just because we didn't do a lot of the improvements, I estimated what I thought it was gonna be from the ones that we talked about, plus the $3,000 we'd already spent this year. And that's where that 10 comes from. So the 30,000 at the top is just repairs for anything landscaping. New plants, plant a new area. There's an island that's got some dead plants that need to be torn out and replaced, that kind of thing. It is a guesstimate, who does that.
I mean, you're gonna see that. So $30,000 divided by 76 is how much of every homeowner has something to do next year. That sounds reasonable. Every homeowner is gonna have 395 worth of maintenance that could be done next year. There's no carryover in this number, which you could carry the last year. So what do you think, Sean? 395 per homeowner for the year. Every homeowner
Right.
will have $300 worth of maintenance in the year to cover the 30,000.
76 homes, it's actually more than that, John. The,
Yeah, 3,000 divided by 76, 394, 0.7374.
so, okay, sorry, I was thinking it was doing the math on the total. The, that's about what the request came in, they asked for, I'll be honest with you. Everything we looked at was $400 for this or $300 for that they wanted done.
And how many people did that?
Probably 50 of the 76. And they were stamped no, 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 because we didn't have budget for it.
Well, what is the restraint to keep people to come in and just use something to have maintenance yet? When they know they've got $400 per household in there.
There isn't, except for our contract says we're supposed to do it. That's part of our charter. I mean, I know that they'd have to go through an architectural approval to do their own planting and so forth, but they could, I suppose.
So that last comment was different from what we're talking about. This is maintenance. That all they have to say is, I need to get this fixed, this area fixed. And we don't have any criteria for saying, at this time, wait a couple of months. Or do them all together, because we've got 5 of them to do.
Understood.
It's just.
Yeah, no, I agree. Some of it's improvements too, though. Sometimes they'll come and say, these plants died, I'd like to have them replaced. Would you replace them with? That's what they tell us. So we have kind of a crossover when they give us a request. That's actually more happening than not. And in some cases, the problems are caused by them replacing the plants. And they don't survive because they're not the right type plant for the irrigation or the area they put them in, and they want us to replace them because they put their own in.
But the plants they replace them with have to match the ARC, right?
And some people ignore that.
It should be a penalty because they.
I entirely agree.
they agree.
I'm just saying the
That's another
dynamic
balance.
is a little bit more than just, let's get it fixed. If it were up to standard kind of procedure, I think Patty would probably agree with this, is that we would have a list of plants that are allowed to be used, and that's all the landscaper would put in and take care of. It wouldn't be a variant of, let me put a hibiscus in and stake it up and watch it fall over during a hurricane. That's
Gentlemen, can I just interrupt here for just a second? I live in Sagewood. Violation should have been issued for the poor landscaping or the replacement landscaping that the builders put in. I noticed in your new ARC guidelines that you are going to take that step. Back of the house, back of the units, I understand they can do whatever they want. As far as requesting maintenance, facade replacement or cinch bugs, that should be alleviated by this $40,000 irrigation system, by the way, which is not replacing like for like, but we'll get into that later. The issues with the landscaping or the sod replacement should be removed, because now you have true green for cinch bugs or bugs. You should not be replacing sod unless this irrigation system, which you guys swear up and down is going to solve everything, doesn't work. Okay, the outside front area, I lived here since 2017. I have not had one bush that needed to be replaced. not one weed that has not been taken out, not one tree that has fallen down. So if we're gonna deal with the 50 people, there needs to be some understanding and training of those 50 people as to what they're replacing the dead plants with. I live next door to 3 homes that have totally torn up the builder's landscaping, which was Florida friendly, and put in plants, annual or perennial. So the outside of these units do not look like what they should when the homeowners purchase them. Violations, guys,
For a second,
yeah,
couple things. One, this is a budget meeting, not a landscaping meeting. Two, I hear your points, all very valid points. If you have neighbors that have broken the rules, please send their addresses to Patty and she will get
he
out there.
already is aware of them.
So we'll get them violations on your behalf.
And also, we don't replace anything.
Right, if they,
We're not.
yeah, if they did it, we don't replace it, yeah. Or you charge it, right?
Mhm.
To return it back to in compliance.
Mark, here's the issue with debating over $30,000 or whatever we used facade replacement. That, in my mind, is a budget item, not a landscaping issue.
Hey, Bert, that's a great point. So let's talk about, Sean, can you?
This property has taken a lot, buddy.
Hey, Bert, hold on, so I'll give Sean a chance to address these things here. So contracting services, that's, I just want to break this down. Contracting services is True Green, is
No,
Sunrise.
it's not. It's
No.
Sunrise.
Oh, just Sunrise.
Yep.
Great. Repairs is,
Repairs is anything that needs to be repaired. Plants dead, plants broken, trees that fell over, hurricane, whatever.
okay.
Repairs.
Improvements,
That's for adding plants to where we didn't have before that weren't planted well. When we've done stuff like that park bench and that the paver stones, that's improvements.
okay. I think we all know what tree trimming is and tree removal and mulch. We don't anticipate replacing mulch next year. And
We've
then
talked about it. I don't have it in there, but if we do, it's $20,000 is the quote we've gotten for this year.
we're doing it this year, right? You've anticipated it doing this year. That's why there's 43,000.
Yeah, that's to
Okay.
remove the old and put the new down. And then, so if we don't do it for following, full 2 years, that does save some money. I put the number in there to see
Yeah,
how.
but we,
effective, but-
last meeting, we said we were
I
gonna
know.
do it on an annual basis, right?
Hey, and I totally agree.
And I'd like to.
And hold on,
in a little,
I'm almost done. And then insect control, the last item,
That is true green.
that is True Green. They do insect control and then weeds as well.
Yes,
Okay. And then below in irrigation now.
that's
this is
Ballinger.
Ballinger,
Ballinger's monthly services.
which we didn't have a contract with last year. We do this year.
Right, because it was separated last year. It's just that Sunrise is doing both.
Right. So it's broken out, so it's nice. And then let's see, repairs. We budgeted last year for $12,000 for irrigation repairs and we only spent 2,400. But that's because
The contracts.
the contracts overlapped. Okay, so we spent 2,400 of our own money, so we're budgeting 3,000 next year of our own money outside the contract. And then the last one is improvements. We budgeted 45K last year. That's for all the
Sprinkler timers.
sprinkler timers that we haven't installed yet, but we've done
But
some.
we've approved contracts are going to be installed shortly.
That's right, they're gonna be installed at the end of this year. Now. You let me know if you wanna get into this one. The Wi-Fi that goes along with the sprinkler timers, where does that fall in this one?
It's under Wi-Fi by itself. It's not part of the sprinkler timers itself, but there's a Wi-Fi budget of $94 a month because the sprinkler timers are connected together by the Wi-Fi.
So we included that in this year's budget for the installation of the.
We actually included it last year. We just didn't get it done.
2023.
yeah, but he had it, it's in this year's budget.
Right,
We
so
went
will
over
that carry over the money that we didn't spend on that this year? We accounted for that to carry over next year.
Of course.
Okay,
That's part of the $2,400, $2,800
Mhm.
surplus.
Yep.
so just because we didn't spend it doesn't mean we can reduce that amount from the budget, because we're gonna need it.
Well, as soon as we get these timers in order for them to be effective, the way that we expect them to, they have to be on the internet.
Yeah.
So we're gonna put a Wi-Fi repeater in and.
Yeah.
And that's part of the budget.
Yeah.
One thing is we pulled up 2022, right? So we're looking over in that right column, where we have the landscaping, if you would, so.
It's 2023, actually.
Yeah,
No, I understand, but just go, and we're looking at those, the landscaping numbers there on the right, right? But if you pulled up and we had the line on the side over here, 2022, those, the blue area would be $65,000.
I thought we had budgeted.
Okay, so this area here if you looked at it in 2022, it would have been $65,000.
Right, we've
And I
reduced
think
it.
what Bert's making the argument is we're reducing the repairs from 45 or $46,000. You know, we had a year where we had $65,000. This year we've had, if you add up that number,
It's, I mean, if you take out the controllers, you know, you've got $112,000 in landscaping last year.
Right.
Take out 54 more, it's, you know, $70,000.
So, yeah, you're reducing it by about $30,000.
That's for the side repairs, because we don't do replacements. Now, there are gonna be some locations, and Bert, you have to hear this, there are gonna be some locations that we're gonna have to replace some of the sod.
That was what I was anticipating.
Yeah.
Even though we've got the new timers in, we've had damage done in the process.
Right.
That's was the anticipation, but it could be wrong.
No,
Because it's a different
it's
location.
prudent, it's prudent.
Did
So-
you hear that,
Bert,
Bert?
Bert, you still there?
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I apologize. This is a very sore, I apologize. This is a very sore subject for me. I tend to get emotional and I should not. Like I said, I'm the former vice president of the board. We took over, you guys then took over from us. There are a lot of things that my neighbors may demand that I don't think that the board has to necessarily respond to. Landscaping always is a big issue. Always. I'm in the property management business. No one is ever happy with any landscaper. Having said that, strides have been made. I walk the community every day. Strides have been made. The grass looks great. The only thing I have problems with, and the board must struggle with this, is what people have done with the front of their homes and how they have modified against the rules and regulations their front yards. And if those people are calling on the board to, oh, I damaged, maybe they left a Robolini palm in that the builder put in, but they damaged it or did root intrusion because they had to plant annuals or perennials. Guys, sir, I don't see that as being the board's problem. And I think that that's a lot of what's going on here.
Sure, Bert, and we've talked about this in board meetings, you know, with the dead grass, right? Somebody's grass is dead in one of the areas where the board is responsible for maintaining either PV or Sagewood or some other areas. And they know they didn't water it. We know they didn't water it. But you can't prove it, right? Like you have.
Well, now you'll be able to though, Mark.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the point.
So that's the point. is
Yeah,
that-
but the point
Yeah.
I'm trying to make is how much are you gonna spend on sod replacement if you kick that back to the homeowner and say, hey, you disconnected the electrical outlet. I don't know how the new timers work.
Hey, Bert, and that is.
Here forward.
That's a great point, Bert, is the new timers we're putting in will alleviate that because they pump out an electronic report that the board can see how much each house watered. Did they disconnect the power? Did they modify the timing? And it'll tell us that was it watered on schedule? Like if I use 200 gallons of water a month, I don't really know what the real number would be, but if I use 200 gallons a month to water my house and my neighbor's only using 30, and then their sod dies, preponderance of the evidence there is going to indicate that they did not water their sod appropriately. And so that's one of the great things about this new system. So we struggle with the same issue. I hear you, sir. And we want to address that next year.
Mark, I appreciate that, but I would assume that enforcing, if indeed this system works the way you guys are saying, enforcing that on the homeowners here to say, look, you Mickey Moused your timer, it's up to you. That I would assume is up to the new board.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, sir. And
Okay.
Bert, we can talk about irrigation and landscaping all day long. It's a
No,
passion.
no, that's fine. Go back to your budget meeting.
You want to turn the meeting back over to Sean so we can get. through
Yes,
the-
please. I'm sorry. Yes, thank you very much
Let's
for
do the
hearing.
math, for a little bit, and then we'll be done for the night. Thanks, Bert. I appreciate it.
So just to recap discussion here, because I see where John's going. He's saying, I'm basing numbers on, I'm pulling something a little out of my hat because I'm basing it on what's happened the last couple of years with some anticipation of problems. I can certainly get an estimate and say, what do you think it would cost? It would take us several weeks to do that. We can get tighter on this, but it's not gonna, it's gonna reduce the numbers a little bit, maybe increase them.
What we don't want to do, right, is a special assessment, where we reduce it so low and say, you know what, we're running out of money.
That's why I go back to 2022, those, take the 54,000 and you take the 7,000 out. You
I can make
added
one.
up those numbers in between, I'm just, the 5,900, the 3,100.
We spent 65.
It's about $65,000 plus or minus
In
$1,000.
2022.
And so we're still lower than it was in 2022.
Well, we
Could we
just
go
lowered
lower?
it 10, I was at 60.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
okay.
So I'm saying, so it's, I think it's a reasonable going in number. Based on, historically what we've done in the past.
So the other question is mulch, no mulch?
Well, I thought the board said we should be going, are we doing mulch? What's
Probably around
what's,
Thanksgiving time.
This year we'll get Thanksgiving time, but I mean, does it seem prudent to do it every single year?
Probably not with the new mulch that we put in, because what's there now is hard. It's this thick, it's coming over the curve, that's the biggest.
Okay, so you're looking for a second coat next year maybe, and then maybe cut back after that, because it takes the shredded mulch breaks down where the bark doesn't, just keeps piling up. So it actually helps enhance the soil. So when you start pounding it up on there, you just don't want it to choke off the base of the plant, which is what we're doing now.
Exactly.
So we could put that number in, it's gonna reduce that.
Because we're doing it so late in the year and we're digging everything in. That's the thing. So it goes-
Putting shredded mulch, or putting in bulk.
Yes, if you go by.
like what they're doing at the.
We've been putting shredded in all the areas now.
Yeah.
Both the landscaper and the irrigation specialist told us it was better. When we had that whole presentation for the Westlake, I researched it and they thought it was better, and that's where we're at. And the architectural stuff has it in it.
So what's the recommended replacement for that every year?
It is not. After putting a good coat down, even Tom says he thinks every other year is probably more than it needs, but every other year is a good number.
Yeah, I think we budget for every other year.
That's exactly right. So we can alternate the pressure washing to mulch, save a little bit of money that way.
That's a good plan.
So should we take out?
Replace that.
No, it's not in there. I don't have any money. There's no money in there for mulch.
Okay.
I have it for pressure washing, but I don't have it for mulch.
Specific assessment, none of the damage.
So we are gonna mulch next year.
We're mulching this year, but not the following.
But you-
We should help for the
We
fall.
somehow write down these assumptions that we did this year about this year, versus next year, and stuff like that. And it should be something we could do as a model going forward, so we don't reconsider this again every year.
Well, when I put these together, I do put footnotes and notes about what we talked about. There's about 15 of them on each one, and I'll put those assumptions in. I want people to know how we came up with the result.
Well, it's not only that, it's just the next year after the next board and the next board.
Right,
You
understood.
know, this is a concept that's gonna go forward if we write it down and make it part of the budgeting process.
Yep, exactly.
I think, unless you guys have objections, I think we can kind of slap the table on this one. It's not approved.
Well, nothing's
until-
approved until October.
Right.
This is all still a work in progress in case something comes up in the interim, because
At the starting point.
But I think the numbers look really good. I think.
in October, I'll put in September's in here and it'll be updated to the last 3 months of the year, and that's the best guess we're gonna get.
You
So-
changed that again? I thought we were down to 350, 59.
I didn't change anything, but I added 12% to the contracted services, which I hadn't done from last year. That's what's the difference is.
Oh, okay, so as soon as we get that.
If I get that, I can put a real number in there.
Right.
Exactly.
Bottom line, great news for Sagewood. They're not looking at a big increase, possibly
Decrease.
a decrease.
Okay, did you want to move back to where we were on the master? Okay, so the master, same kind of issue. We looked at the sheet before, but I hadn't totally gutted it out, and I added some things in, just like I did here at the end of the year that we're gonna spend money on. I will, give me a second, I've got to slide over to where I need to be first.
That's for one versus agreement.
So,
Hey, Sean, I'll fill some space here while you're pulling that up. To those in the, no, is it, okay, to those in Zoom land, we're gonna move on to the master. Thank you very much for participating in the Sagewood portion.
okay, so again, the same color coding as you saw before, green items are things that were contracted for, red or the orange color are things that we're going to spend at this point that hasn't been contracted. This is based on, the claim. I want you to see this rollover on this one here. The claim, part of this is the claim from Associated that we're negotiating at this point. The other part of it is, that 36 is what we said, it could end up being more than this. We don't know, but basically that's the number I put in was the median number that we started with. So that's what that miscellaneous number comes from.
Hold on, so should we put our proposed offer settlement, or should
I
we
did.
put the worst, or should we put the full total claim until we hear we've got some kind of adjudication?
We could, we've always had it in as a liability up to this point in my overview, so I'm glad to put the whole number in there. I thought it
Well, I'm
would be-
putting it up for discussion, but I honestly think, until we get some kind of indication that we're getting some kind of settlement, I think we should carry the full amount. That shows what we may be forced to pay. And that we may be forced to pay between now and the end of the year, correct?
And that's why I've got it in the December budget. Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
yeah, so, I mean, I'm just putting it that.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I always like to err on the side of caution. Is where I like to be, and that's where you want to be. So,
Well, right now, that is our liability, not what we want it to be. It's what-
I don't think that we're talking about next year's budget.
it is not.
Right, we don't need to consider that if we're talking about next year's budget, because we're not gonna have to pay that.
Carryover matter.
Hold on a second. Carryover matters. So if we have extra carryover, it carries into the new budget, then it affects the budget for next year.
And we may
You
think,
mean
oh,
debt
yeah,
carry.
Sorry,
You're talking about the debt carry. So if we don't pay that this
debt,
year,
debt or surplus, both carry.
I
over.
said, you're assuming we're not gonna pay that off this year.
No, I am. I'm assuming we'll
Yeah.
pay it by December.
Okay.
This is December. We're looking at last year's
Yeah.
forecast is what we're doing at the moment.
but we may end up having to pay that amount. And if we went to 14, we could be theoretically more than that.
Jason also brought up the Park Square claim, and we've heard nothing, zero from them at this point, not even like, here's the lawsuit. I don't, we haven't heard anything. I sent back an email, and I know I copied you guys on saying, glad to consider this, if you can show me some documentation to prove what you say.
And then nothing.
I got crickets. So I've discounted it on the fact that we have nothing that's actually legally pending at this point.
Right.
That may not be prudent, and I'm asking.
But we've
So
been
if
given
we,
$50,000.
If we're
This is a-
setting aside an amount in the budget when we get to the end of the year, we haven't spent it on those two items. Why not just pull what we've set aside for those two items out as a separate item and don't bother with putting them into the budget this year? Because we don't think we're gonna pay it in
30% tax on. It will be a
Something we haven't
surplus,
spent.
it'll be a surplus, it's not spent.
No, John, I think what John said, if I'm going to check, is not put it in as a miscellaneous item. Put it as a legal expense at the bottom, so it wouldn't influence your budget numbers. And it would be an outstanding liability at the bottom,
So an
Right,
adjustment at the
is that what
bottom,
you're
is what you're saying?
adjustment at the bottom.
Is that
So
what you're
that
saying?
it
No, I
doesn't
guess
affect our. Is that
And
right?
we, every time.
Okay, I can do that. We
Just-
did that last year with, for some of the things we were trying to calculate from associate. I put the adjustments at the bottom so you could see what we thought that liability would be without affecting the numbers. I can do that.
But John, that's what you were trying to say, right?
Right.
So that we wouldn't, right, so.
Yeah, just add another line in there and total up that way. That's fine. The result will be the same at the moment, but what number do you want me to use for that adjustment at the moment? All of it?
As the liability.
I would use, what we think we're gonna pay. It's in the budget this year that we're taking care of. Okay, and, then we'll have to deal with any overage. Or the benefit of any surplus. when it gets fair.
Okay, so that's what I've done. I put the maximum. I thought what we told George was offer him 27, no more than 36, the number that we gave to him, and tell him to pound sand about that. So that's what I put in as the maximum I thought we could pay this year. Then the other balance would come out of possibly contingency the following year if it hit the following year.
Mhm.
If that's the case. Is that reasonable? Okay. Then this number should stay where it's at. What do we agree about Park Square?
Same thing.
So we're saying that. number.
Keep it in as a liability at the bottom. I don't think we're gonna pay anything, so I shouldn't put it in a payable item until it resolves maybe next year.
The. So my personal opinion is that if you had put it in the budget this year, so it's covered under this year's budget. Then the money related to those two items should be pulled out in the second.
Oh, I
pocket
don't
of the second.
disagree with you,
Okay,
not at all. I'm just saying, do we want to calculate the $62,000 from Park Square as part of that liability still?
yes.
Okay, so then I'll move it to the bottom like we talked about. And, well,
So if we, I have a quick question, regarding carrier, if we save that money that we're allegedly to owe these two companies, we save it from this year's budget, we keep that money, like John said. Then we have to carry it over the next year, you're saying we're gonna pay tax on it.
so the way that the 1128 reads is that your exempt income is not taxable, as long as you can prove you spent 90% of it on your budget.
Gotcha.
Anything over that 10% mark or anything outside of that exempt area, it becomes taxable. So if I've got this huge surplus at the end because I didn't spend it this year, which I'm planning to spend it if we get to that stage in a second. If I don't spend it, they're gonna take 30 cents on the dollar. If I can find a way to put it into something, now there's always the option of rolling it into reserve. You can do that, pre-fund reserves and not pay taxes on it till you spend the money out of the reserve. But all those things are possible. It's just at this point, I think we're gonna end up spending. I'd be shocked if we don't end up spending the whole money for associate. I really would, because the reason we have part of the surplus we have is because we didn't pay that. If you think of it that way. So the Park Square, I think that's somebody made a screw up. They sent us a bad email. They haven't even replied back. Not even, we'll take a look at it. We'll let you know. Nothing. So I'm not gonna chase them. If you want me to, I will, but I'm not going to.
Okay, let me make sure, I'll be clear here.
Look the other way.
I understand, I'm not saying we don't pay this and we carry it over to the next year, so I think we need to put it at the end as a separate liability item. After we cut off all of our things,
No problem.
and then say, okay, yes.
I
but
agree with
we
that.
have this one, I agree, there's gonna be some kind of settlement. But I think we should cover as a liability the total amount.
Okay.
Until somebody.
So I
in the
think
legal
we're in agreement on that.
Says,
I think we're in
yes,
agreement on that.
50,000 at the bottom. Same thing with the associate. I think it's prudent to put it in there as a potential liability, a separate line item. To say this is a potential liability that could come up this year, but most likely won't.
You mean Park Square?
Park Square, right, Park Square.
So I would also call the auditors, tell them what we're gonna do and how, what we expect is gonna happen, and get them to agree now before we do that.
Okay.
Instead of just.
I talked to
walking
Rob
in and
about this
say
at-
no.
That's good.
At kind of an extent the other day, and was thrilled that your suggestion, he was thrilled to know that they were on the plate. Yeah, I'm glad to do that. Tell him what we're doing to make sure he knows how the budget's gonna lay out and how the fund transfer at the end of the year will happen, because that's gonna make a difference.
Yeah, but it won't inflate expenses here, right, from a budgetary perspective. You won't look back and say, well, we had to spend this when you have this
Sure.
50,000
At this
out of
point,
the bulk blue problem that.
right, but you can't base the numbers only on an arbitrary figure, because basically, if we put all the expenses at the bottom, this $36,000 comes out of it. Now I have a surplus.
No, I'm not saying it's a surplus, it's no liability at the bottom, so it'll.
So it
it'll
does
be
have to
there.
affect numbers, otherwise it's,
All right, never mind.
Yeah.
It's basically called.
But you're putting it in as a miscellaneous expense up there.
I think we're arguing the wrong thing. Money, if it's still a liability, it still comes out of the budget. It doesn't matter how you look at it. This is last year's budget spending. It's not our predicted budget. This is in 2024.
So this $38,000 then should be in the contingency. Because it's a contingency, it's an unexpected expense.
Okay,
It's
that's
not
the
a-
label.
I understand, but I
Yeah.
still don't. But then they were gonna build off of that as, oh, here's an expense that we had, so we should
Done.
put something in this year's budget.
Yeah.
That's the point I'm trying to make, and if I'm am not making sense, I'm making accounting sense. We have people here that say yes, but
So it's fine. I mean, the label is not terribly important as much as it is the fact that it does affect the bottom line for this year. What you're looking at right now is this year.
get it, but we're doing this as a forecast for what we're gonna do next year. We're
Let's just
using
get
these
past this.
numbers to
Just tell
build
me
the
what you
next
want me to
one.
do and I'll do it.
Right
It's
now,
simple as I can
think
make
it's
it.
right- it's in the right spot.
Right.
Well, it's in the right spot until we get word from the auditors it's right or wrong, and we determined that. What we were trying to do is say that we already collected the money from the members this year.
Yes.
Pay this, we expected to pay it this year and settle out. It didn't happen, so we take the money we collected from them. And we put it in a pocket on the side. And we close out because in the budget, it would be showing as an expense, we just didn't spend it, okay? And then next year, we've got this left over, so we don't have to hit next year's budget.
No, I understand. That is the reason for an overlap like that for sure. That's right. I'm just trying to make sure that we don't allow that to affect the carryover because we do have a surplus. So that's the only thing I was trying to get across.
Yeah, we're 100% in agreement there, it's just, we then look at these numbers like we just did, 2 years, they look back and say, well, they had $36,000 here, so maybe we should have $36,000 every year there for a contingency when in fact, this was a legal expense that was unexpected, so it should be at the bottom, it says, this is something that was completely unexpected, completely wasn't in the budget at all, so it's a new budget item at the bottom. That's what I'm trying to say. It still will show.
Okay, so I'm
A
sorry,
liability.
I think of things a little differently because you still have to categorize it in the general ledger. And it has to go someplace in the general ledger. So I put it in the general ledger, the miscellaneous, because that's what it is, with a footnote telling you what it is.
Okay. All right,
We continue.
but we have, is it 36 or 50,000?
The third, which one are you talking
Do you
about?
want me to put the 50,000 or the 36? I think we just
I'm
agreed.
asking the board, I'm asking the people at the table.
Oh.
I'm asking what is the consensus? I think we should put what we have been charged. And that we may have to pay. We don't want to pay it. That's separate from what our negotiating position is, but I think it's that's the liability we have. That's mine. If everybody thinks differently, that's fine. It's all the discussion.
Well, we're not finalizing it yet, so let's go with the 60 or whatever the number is.
It's $50,799.
Think about it and revisit it in another week or so.
Yeah, we may get a bit
I
more.
mean, we don't have to have it done today, it's
Right.
we created a concept there. Maybe we'll get it settled before the end of the year and it'll be a moot point.
Okay, so the 50,000 has been put in.
Okay.
As an expense, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, anything that goes
liability.
out of our account is an expense, yeah.
Liability.
And
So
we don't spend it before the end of the year.
So where would you put the other one?
We're gonna carry that 6,000.
same place, just make another footnote for it, because basically it's going to keep it together, it's all the same problem. I don't have that exact number, but it's
In
62.
here, this is one, just two lines.
There's only one GL on it.
Spend it.
Sorry.
The rest is not confused.
Well, that's what I do schedules all the time, I do schedule for each line, but
That's an operating. I mean, they-
Well, you could do it.
it's just a good- So just like, when it's paid out of it, like, the work order is.
well, it's close, like,
Yeah, but you know, but for
This is-
so like, okay.
still, even if you printed this out and I put those in the work order, it's gonna come on the one side.
Better forward next year.
Yeah. Mine's always.
Right.
I guess
So there's no tax.
Yeah, we can do it.
No, you break it down by line item. Then you can, that's what that schedule is, you put the schedule out for the one item and it tells you what it was, but typically it totals it together. So,
Just how much you educated.
The other one, pair bills. I don't think we said seven. I don't know.
I'm sorry, what?
Sorry.
Talk
Do you
straight.
think we're gonna end up owning them?
No, I don't, but
Then I say we don't.
I've been wrong many times, in fact, twice or so tonight.
So if you don't think we're gonna end up owning it, then I say we don't put it in.
I trust John's judgment. I really do. whatever John says, I'll go with. No pressure.
He says we're not gonna.
Well, the only thing we're doing, if we carry it over, we set aside money, we're treating it as paid this year. No tax on it, the way it's happening. If we get on the other side, we end up not paying it, well, our exposure is 30% of that. So we know we get the cash back.
Instead, to end up not getting a bill for it, right, then we don't have to pay tax on that money.
I'm not
Since
sure
we're
what
accrual
it is.
based, you end up to the 10th, 20th day of the year and you get a contract in the system before the 31st, I can spend the money.
January?
No, 31st of December,
No, okay. Oh, I see what you're saying.
because it's accrued back to when I put it in the system. It's supposed to be-
We got 60K set aside. In
Spend the money.
December. It looks like they're not gonna get a bill this year.
That's right.
Got a bigger playground, I think, for me.
Well, it only matters if you roll it over and don't
Fine.
get billed next year.
Yeah.
You only get the tax bill if you roll it over tax free and don't get a bill next year.
Yeah.
Then it's 60,000 in income. I think that's what
It
John
was-
said.
It was a carryover surplus that we should have paid taxes on. So that year, because it changed in nature to
So
something we paid
That
taxes
issue
on.
next year.
It will affect us the following season because we carry it over the budget.
So we're gonna do it, John. We're gonna put it on the sheet or not?
Bill on the sheet.
Put John says put it on the sheet. John says
Okay.
put it on the sheet, but I would.
So let me just add that number in. I don't know the exact number, it's 62,000 and change. I'm just gonna put 62,000 in here so we can put it in there.
Good enough.
We're
And,
still talking about it, you know, we've got to put money to-
Okay, so Josh, if we're gonna change the way we're looking at this point. So the surplus, obviously at that point, because I put some things to spend this year, I'm gonna have to take out. Ends up being, our bottom line ends up being $2,297 if we do it that way. So I left exactly that amount in there, assuming this is the way it would go. Now, let me show you what I plan on spending even in excess of that, if you're game, okay? These are the things you guys asked me to jump off with last year, so, last time. So I've got $60,000 in here for playground replacement. Okay? I've got $45,000 in here for plant replacement in the pool area and the lake house. And there's the difference right there. Those two items are the big ones. There's also some improvements here for this $5,000 is for irrigation, the timers and things that we haven't replaced for the other areas.
And then I found that we
What about the pool?
Right. The main ones at the pumps. Because even Westlake needs to have theirs done, so
That's the playground.
No, the 60,000 is.
$60,000 for the playground, $45,000 for landscaping improvement, planting around the two main areas that need it badly. And then we still end up with that liability that we just talked about. So I know you guys think I'm strange, but I knew this is the way it was gonna go, so I left it this way intentionally. We end up with a $2,297 surplus.
But the 60,000 is to the playground out here
Yeah.
or the pool playground?
Full playground belongs to the CBD.
No,
No,
he's
no,
talking
the
the splash.
pool in the pool,
Either one,
the splash
take
pad.
your pick.
It's the splash.
Take out the
If
splash.
you want to do the splash pad, we can do that.
I think the splash pad is,
More important.
Mm-mm. This thing's rotted.
I know that one's falling apart. That's why that was my guess, but
but I think from a.
I think we budget
community
splash pad.
perspective, That
Next year.
is a liability that we have to fix.
sure it is.
We can take this playground out.
I think that project requires a bit more research than saying, can you build me a new wooden playground? Or, because basically we've got to find the right materials, find the right vendors. Something I think you should budget for next year.
What, school?
Splash. I'm sorry?
Isn't the pool scheduled for resurfacing next year?
It is, but that's in the reserve.
Well,
It's
no,
funded.
no, but I was thinking it would make sense to do this.
That's
splash pad-
Absolutely.
The splash pad removal
Good point,
or
Jason.
repair.
Right.
when
At the
when
same
pool's
time,
down-
when the
pool's
pool's
down
drained.
anyways.
Right, and then with the 60,000 or 62,000 that we're not gonna pay Park Square, we can take that money and put it in the reserve for the splash pad.
Splash pad is not funded, but the resurfacing is, but yes, we could use that money and throw it at it and go
For
forward.
the reserves, and then we're not paying taxes.
So all that makes sense for some strange reason.
I don't know.
That's what we hear in big bucks.
She knew I was going here already because we talked about it earlier, so.
So You know, the sheet we were just looking at for Sagewood, where we looked at what we budgeted last year, what was spent last year, and then.
That's coming. I was just talking about where we wanted to end up the surplus to calculate that next sheet. So let's just take a look at that.
Looks good.
So on this sheet, this is, give me a second, John, I'll get it marked. You know, my dates are all in fun, right? Just got- okay. They want you. Okay, so this is the same sheet. It's longer because we have more items, but the same sheet that you looked at before where I have a forecasted, which is that previous sheet we looked at is the forecast, and this is dynamic. So when I changed that one, we were doing it, this has been updated with it. So at this point, that's all these numbers down the side here. Our proposed budgets on the C column are actual approved budget from last year is on the E column. So I haven't recommended too many changes here at all. I'm using the numbers as a basis and rounding up in some cases for a little bit of extra income. I underestimated processing fees. I don't think we'll be changing as many houses this year as we did last year because of Park Square.
Right, and it was-
Right, so I lowered that a little bit, so there's not a whole lot going on there. I took what we did I'm hoping that we won't have as many non-sufficient fund fees because we don't, have many checks that bounce. So I left that as a blank item and I never had it budgeted in the first place. Late fees, we actually made $19,500 with people paying late. I know that seems sad, but we did. Wow. So this gives you your total income. Our income was 1.2 million last year. We're expecting 1.1 in the projected. The carryover, as you saw, changed dynamically, so that's the carryover number we're looking at momentarily. Everything in yellow again is based on actual contracted, and they're either calculated by our monthly expenses or the contract itself, unless I've got a notation on it.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you go back up this?
Sure.
Where it says expense income was 12,000.
Yes, you made 11,000 this year, 11,900. You expensed out the same amount of money, but that's what we took in.
A large portion of that was some investing. I'm not gonna have that again next year, the way we did it. this
Okay,
year.
so that's 6,000 of it. So you want me to reduce it?
I think so.
I think there's other events you can make money from, but I'll be glad to do that.
Probably so.
6,000. So that reduces the income there.
That's a category that's good to be under budgeted because we.
For income, you
Make
mean?
over it's extra.
I'm an advocate of not having any income for events. I'm an advocate of finding a budget for it and spending it.
I agree with you.
But that's just me.
Right.
But we do make money as if we take tickets for Santa, we have income against the expense, obviously. It sometimes is a wash, sometimes it's not. You'll see that what we spent on the events is about the same as what we took in, almost exactly, a little bit more, we spent a little bit more, a few $1,000s. Mostly for DJ trucks, to be honest with you. Moving down, so the bank fees are pretty much fixed, throughout. I increased it just a little bit. We've had some return checks and so forth. We get those, return deposit fees. Those happen fairly often, actually. So that's the bulk of it. We only pay $4 a month otherwise. That's an imaging charge. We don't pay for a bank account. So that's bank fees entirely, not just the bank account, like any fee that we get charged from the utility company, all the bank fees. Service fees are based on QuickBooks monthly. That's straight $200. Equipment purchase, we talked about $16,000 worth of equipment last year. I put some of that money, $5,000 of it in this year's end spending to try to buy a couple things, including the fact now that's going to change because we're looking at possibly buying that folder machine. So that goes up because of that. But this equipment is 2 more iPads, because we originally wanted 3, 1 for each office staff and 1 for the security company. We wanted to upgrade the monitors for some reason. I can't remember why Tommy wanted to do that, but I do know there was a good argument for it. And maybe upgrading the 2.
I just want to see this little monitor here.
Yeah, the 2 workstations too, getting you something that's a little bit more robust in that area. So that's just a lofty optional dream on the equipment side.
How about because we're talking about buying a screen and a projector?
Yes, that's on this year's budget.
That is.
I've included that in that money to buy a screen and projector and another scanner for your desk and a couple things like that. That's already on this year's budget to spend.
2023, not 2024.
Sorry,
23, not 24.
exactly. 23's budget to spend before the end of the year.
Okay.
It was on 23's budget and we had the money, we might as well purchase what we planned to.
Can we include an equipment purchase right now in envelope folders?
I'm sorry,
Can we put the envelope folders in equipment right now and see what it looks like?
No, it's.
the envelope, it's in 2023's budget, not
Oh,
2024.
we do.
We've already included it.
Vote, well, I'm gone over it 2 days and we can order it and have.
Recommended by area, but in 2023.
I'm gonna try, but
We don't know. what they-
what we just did, roughly with $2,000, so I moved some of it to 2024. just because I knew that was gonna happen, it just knew how this would go, it's just, I'm just trying to predict.
Here, you know.
Not too many changes,
Help
yeah.
with the community events.
Of course.
That's what I was thinking.
Yes.
Okay. So the only other, the contingency again is based on 12% on this one. We left it at 10% in Sagewood at the moment. We can decide whether we want to make that go back.
Is that a manual entry or just a math problem there?
It's a math,
Did the computer, this sheet does it itself?
what?
The contingency fee.
It's 10% of the total revenue
Mhm.
rounded up.
Okay, no, what I'm saying, is, do you have to manually put that in, or is it automatically calculated?
Well, I manually put all of it in.
Okay.
I mean, at one point, I just did the calculations that carried over. So when I
Yeah.
change the contingency on the other end, we change the percentage, it changes here.
The spreadsheet has many more columns than what you're looking at, right?
So nothing below this is really changing very much. Conferencing, that notation is just to let you know that that's what we pay for Zoom each year.
Mhm.
This services here is basically what we pay for QuickBooks payroll each year. So there's not a whole, those footnotes are at the bottom of the page. This is the vehicle policy for the work cart. Down here we have, our assumes a 12% increase on these.
Is the work cart, is that the little thing that runs around up there? Any golf cart?
Yes.
Our telephone went down from 300 and some odd dollars a month last year to $19 a month because we changed to Ubiquity's voice over IP. That's a huge savings, by the way. We could probably get our ADP fee down to $8 a month. There's multiple monitoring companies. We're paying $60 a month right now for that. There are things we can save money on, but I'm going to show you why that's not prudent at the moment. So all these utilities are just based on a 12% increase. According to what I've read, it's going to be between 10 and 12, so I went to the high side. Contracted services, this is based on a 12% increase from the contract we were hoping to get from Sunrise, which we don't have. So here are some of the optional things again. We're going back to repairs and improvements and tree trimming and tree removal and mulch again. So we didn't do any repairs last year. We didn't replace any plants at all for the master. Again, if we do the ones we're planning to that I put the $45,000, there'll be less of this to do, but there are some dog park areas and some places that need some love. So that's what the improvements are for, is to try to cover that. Tree trimming, we spent 20 grand or 19,200 this year, which was predicted. I left it to be because that's including the deadwood, by the way, the deadwood calculation. I'm leaving tree removal in for hurricane purposes all the time, so that's why tree removal stayed the same.
Did you want to up tree trimming because it's at 10,000 and put it at 20,000?
No, I don't, because we've already done the massive amount of the tree trimming this year. It's not likely we're gonna have to do that much more again next year.
12,000 we're gonna do this year.
Yeah, so this is, okay.
It's a reduction, assuming that we're not gonna have too much more to do, just having some in case we have to.
Has the tree people, have they surveyed the entire neighborhood?
Yes. And we walked it a full 2 days.
Okay. Alright.
Insect control, believe it or not, our insect control, the monthly, that's why I asked you about the monthly, because it seemed high to me.
Right.
We paid 3 fees to True Green, $449 for chinch bugs, $449 for the trees and shrubs, and $552 for the lawns per month for the 3 properties. So I better not see a dang bug anywhere.
Call them up, because that's what I do. You gotta check this out. I send them out there every single time.
Irrigation, that number is real. That's her new number. She actually lowered it from last year, believe it or not. Because they've got a handle on it now.
Right.
So they're liking that. Left a nominal amount of money in here. We didn't spend anywhere close to, the improvements that we planned to. That's for the timers and things that's in that other budget. So at the end of this year, we won't have to replace timers again. So I left $1,000 for possible heads and things like that that have to be improved.
Which some of them covered by. So.
So the big number that adds a lot to this is we budgeted $100,000. We're gonna spend $999,096 for the security this year. So we're gonna soak up that budget that we put for last year in its entirety. So I left it for what the contract reads it's supposed to be. Now, mind you, there are a few things that came in here that we're gonna go over in a second, like the pool management, that they're now this first time we're being added, the janitorial and the pool are now adding sales tax. So we contracted an amount, and we're adding sales tax to them, which is adding, 7.5% to the budget. So these are all based on their contracts, every one of them. I rounded up on this one because I don't have a current contract for fire prevention. Other than that, these fire prevention, the HVAC. We still have an outstanding problem with the HVAC, which is further down. Last year, we were told that we had two freon leaks. They've recharged them a couple times. You've had them recharged when they fixed it. They have not been repaired. So I left money in for that.
Yeah, because there would be something, another invoice for.
You just got a bid for $2,200 for something to do too that came in. That's sent forwarded to you. It went to AP.
1,600?
I can't remember the numbers.
We have in the reserves for these guys.
For air conditioning, nothing. That's maintenance. Only to replace it if we had to replace one. I'm sorry?
The equipment, to replace the equipment?
If we replace the equipment, yeah. We do have money in for to replace the entire equipment, but not for repairs.
So what I'm saying is that if the repairs are becoming too frequent and too expensive.
Time to replace it. I agree.
At what point do we consider?
I don't know when it is, but it's not funded yet, but I can take a look and make sure we know that. But yeah, that's a good thing to judge. If they come back and say there's $10,000 to repair and it's gonna cost 20 and we've got 10 funded, we should probably replace. We should.
And then that'll bring us back to a smaller dollar amount because we're doing it over a longer period of time.
Yep, for however long it takes for them to put it up again, right? I mean,
But we went in late, so we're over the question right now. So
just want to make sure it's finished. Go ahead.
The question, with the security contract, would that include the automatic 5% increase?
At the
next
end of the year, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so here's your blue items, as we talked about before, the structures, expenses. These are just things that we've been carrying over. On the $60,000, of course, is for the playground we just talked about. We had 9,000 in it last year for building. If we spend the repair, the $10,000 on repair or not, that's why we were just talking about the HVAC. It's a repair, it's a replacement. So I left it at 2,000 until we find out exactly what it's going to cost. And the rest of it's pretty self-explanatory, just rounding up from last year's numbers a little bit. It gives us some room. Now, the plumbing was a little high because we had to fix that pressure relief valve and stuff like that. Remember, that was some extra stuff that we had to do, but I left it at this number just to be safe.
And the toilets are starting to leak.
So that number's a proven number then. Okay, so the pool filters, the 1728, we shouldn't have to do much repair on that this year, but it'd be probably a good idea to have it so we don't get panicked on it.
The full filters, yeah, they should be done.
So-
This was the first time they were ever replaced.
I left $1,000 in for repairs on the fitness equipment because we have one pending, right? Just in case. I know we've got a warranty and a maintenance contract, but when things break like that, gear and stuff, it's still our cost, right?
Exactly.
We haven't pressure cleaned because we have a pressure cleaner and we had a guy that used to pressure clean occasionally. So I'm thinking maybe that's not a good idea. So I put pressure cleaning.
I don't follow that.
When JR was here, he was pressure cleaning the sidewalks occasionally. We have a pressure cleaner, not a very good one, and we had someone who could do the work. We don't have that employee anymore. And the pressure cleaning is not being done, so it seems prudent to just hire somebody to get it done.
Yeah. Good idea.
Okay,
person, residents of that person. While she's out there, a couple hours.
Exactly. We thought about it.
okay, so the other items that are probably worth talking about is janitorial we skipped over here. That's at $24,000 up there.
Right, so janitorial.
I'm not janitorial, not the janitorial, I'm sorry, the maintenance guy, maintenance company, maintenance somebody, whoever we're doing it. I'm guessing it's gonna cost us $2,000 a month. The previous one was costing us about $1,250 to $1,500, depending on how many visits he came by, sometimes $2,000 because he would come more, but, does that number need to be inflated? You've been talking to people?
No, I don't, because we don't have stuff, we don't have a lot of major issues. I mean, the biggest thing, you know, as an end, I just sent out the proposal earlier today. The major items are all the debts, but it's nothing, you know, nothing over 500.
So are we gonna do?
Probably split into each category, you know. HVAC, maintenance HVAC is in the HVAC
Well,
number.
these are contracted services, so the reason why they're separated is because this maintenance contract would have been a maintenance repair company as
Right.
opposed to actual maintenance. So that's why they're separated, John. Are we gonna be doing a monthly contract with this group? We don't know.
No, just as we need them.
So that number might be inflated is what I'm getting at. That's why it's blue and it's sitting there staring at you. We went by pressure cleaning, so there's not a whole lot going on here. These is the general, the pool, and the painting for component contribution. They're not changing at all. In fact, these are fixed. And the bottom line is that the monthly would be $68.15. So the roundup would be $69.
This is intolerable, the 15-cent increase. I will not stand for this.
Dollar.
Will not stand for this.
So it would round up to 69 because I always round to the nearest dollar. Not the nearest dollar, but the next dollar up, to make it easy to calculate and not write the checks wrong, even though they write them wrong anyway. So but that was the point behind it. And,
Some notes I got for the message, I think you covered all of them. I just want to make sure I'm here for a minute. So the lake house fully ground replacement, we got $60K for that.
yep,
Do you include in that demolition of the old one and as well as the installation of some sort of ground package? Yeah. It seems low to me, based on some of the photos in that board.
Depending on the funding. That's why I have two coming out this week to take pictures, because the demolition, we can have the demolition done by somebody else. We don't have to do it by that.
the numbers are also based on what the reserve study said its value was. We're not funded for it. We'll be 10,000 funded this year at the end of the year for it. We don't need to pull from that if we're gonna spend it on a budget, just let it keep funding for the next time. But the reality is that's where we're at. Now, there's a couple things that, you know, you could always, like, we took 77,500 out of pool furnishings. If at the end of the year, we didn't have something to spend on, you could put some of that money back into to replenish some of the reserve. Just pre-fund the reserve, as long as it doesn't go over 10%, I think it is, that we have without a vote.
Do we have anything in reserve for this program?
Not yet. Well, $10,000, like I said, at the end of this year, we'll have 10,000.
It's like 89.
Something like that, right? I just think that number that we have scheduled for us, 60K, I think it's gonna be really low. I think we're probably gonna have to bring it to the point, we're gonna pick the playground that we want, we're gonna pick the ground material, and be like, oh, we need like another $12,000.
And that's gonna go to Sean and say, Sean,
I'd rather, that's what I'm saying, I'd rather budget for the next year's budget than have to scrimp and kind of look around.
It's not really scrimping, you was just take it from your landscaping budget this year and get the playground done. But the whole point is that we don't know what those numbers are, we don't have quotes yet. It's better to get the quotes and to use them as a better factor. These are guesses based on the reserve studies numbers and what I could look up online.
Got it. So we got, how long to get the playground number nailed down? So.
Till we approve the budget,
Meeting?
no, till we approve the budget, which is before the annual meeting.
hopefully by the end of.
And
We can change the budget,
usually
budget
around
can be
the
amended at
middle
any
of
time,
the
by the way.
legs.
So
The dues came.
They actually can, but it's dicier, as you might guess.
So I got a question though, so the playground you're talking about is gonna have some kind of way of containing a ground cover and gonna have the rubber stuff in there.
It's gonna be something, it's gonna be turf or.
Right, but there's a code for that.
Yeah, there is. There's a
Code that
specific
says
type
you
of,
have to have 3 inches of mulch or 3 inches
Well,
of.
of course, like, I'm not gonna make it up, whatever.
Okay,
I'm sure the
but
playground.
that's, we're planning on doing that.
Jason's gonna make it up.
So then we're gonna have to have something painted too, right? Or we're just gonna lay it out there and it'll get kicked into woods.
Common area.
I'm an advocate of putting pavement down and just letting the hot.
It's so-
Works on it, you-
That's right.
The old, yeah, the old monkey
Skinny.
bars that were metal over concrete.
Right.
I only hit my head 3 or 4.
The next thing is splash pad.
Mhm.
Again, I don't think we got enough. What did we say, 46? Something like that, that's in the budget for splash pad replacement?
That's good.
Well, it's not in the budget, that's in the reserve.
That's
But if we're gonna do it next year,
Then you need to put it in this budget, that's exactly my argument. If you want to do the splash pad, is throw the money in.
so what do we have in reserves for it now?
Yes.
Do you know?
I can look, hang on,
Ballpark?
I think it's 46.
46,000 in the reserves now for it?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a look real quick, just
So if you
I'm
take it
talking
out
on
of
my hat,
reserve,
No worries.
then it's back on the budget.
hard for me to.
Right, so what I'm saying is budget another 30K in next year's budget for the splash pad.
Master Reserve Study,
In addition to what, are you gonna expand?
water play
there, or
structure,
are you gonna, what are you gonna?
it is not funded at the moment,
There's nothing.
it's 10,000
No,
each
but
year.
What I'm trying to understand is.
Uh,
So we're not
we're
10,000
taking
next.
something
and it thinks it's only worth 60.
So whatever.
So 2023 was 10,000.
Well, let me enlarge it for
We're
John.
gonna take away from
So
the
you can
amount
see
of money we take out of this year's.
So nothing was put in there for that until this year.
You're saying, so they-
Right, nothing is putting most everything in, it could be $9 each a month.
If you remember before we.
But there was 30,000. The rest of it's already been set aside and start putting it in reserves.
Yeah.
So even though we're spending $60,000.
Yeah, no, I absolutely get it, but that's my point.
Yeah.
The budget we have now is what we, it's reality.
Yeah.
So we have to maintain this, you know, and it may.
So realistically though, I mean, this is what, you can see the yellow is telling me that in 2024, this is due to be replaced. That's the replacement cost.
What we were saying is only has 52.
No, it has,
Taking down the reserves.
it has 81 plus 52 plus.
Oh,
52.
starting about, right, okay, so it's got 100,000.
So.
It's got 91,665.
92.
Have something ready. when
Exactly,
the
that's how the numbers get.
If you pull that
Yeah, I
out,
don't operate exactly, it was math, it's an approximation.
Okay, it's an abomination. just like that.
It's an approximation. Usually, it's not always.
So that's, we have $91,665 we searched the pool this year.
And we don't even expect.
And that's what-
No,
You're there.
for what quote.
Right.
So the splash pad has $10,000 of it funded this year and 60, this is the same as the playground. Just started funding it this year. We have 10,000 at the end of this year, $60,000 it's expected replacement cost.
Yeah.
So technically not supposed to be replaced till 2028.
So if we want to replace it, then we need to budget for it next year.
We can take, yeah. You can take 10,000,
From the reserve.
Mhm.
But the rest of it needs to come from operating.
our budget.
Or pay 50.
So I say we put 60K in the next year's budget.
Okay, so you want to put a component in for, that's actually, general, yeah?
So that's 70,000.
I think it's gonna cost that much.
So.
Talking about water features, they're gonna run from. It's expensive.
And they're hard to find.
Especially the hydro valve.
I know. When they would be two companies.
Yeah, the sire's gonna cost more than that. Sure.
There's the pilot, right? There's none of that.
Okay, so if I add to, the maintenance for the pool of, I don't have a line for it, but we add $60,000, I'll put it just temporarily into the miscellaneous, so it, shows up here.
Okay.
I'll add the line in, I'll put the 60K right here, whoops, really,
Would it go in the pool area or would it go? in-
Taking its own
it's
time.
cool, yeah, it would
Is
be,
it rather than
well, I don't have
area with same area with the,
right, but I don't have, I've got pool possible in here, so I'm gonna put 62 in here, that's maintenance on the pool, right, so 62,000. It had two. So that number changes the bottom line to six,
Two more slides.
nope, it didn't total, hold on. let's
You
check
did
my
it,
numbers.
the second line, who did it in?
So now all these other numbers are suspect.
No,
So that one, well, that didn't.
All right, I'd like to put something on the table and have a question.
yeah,
So we have a surplus this year in the security fee,
It's already been calculated.
No, it's already.
but we're not using it for security.
It's correct. It's gonna be
I have a problem with that.
part of the surplus.
Okay,
We're using it for lawsuits.
What are you gonna spend it on this year?
I don't know. That's a discussion.
Part of it comes down to the lawsuit.
I agree, but as I'm asking, what would you like, if we weren't assigning to the lawsuit, what would you spend the 60K that we had? We didn't assign the 60K to the possible lawsuits. Where would we spend the 60K for security this year?
Right.
There's only
No
contracted,
security bill for 60K for this year to spend, just spend on something.
Well, what other security things did we spend this year on other items? Like how much we spent on access control pieces? We redid access control through, for almost all facilities. As far as I'm concerned, that's a security budget. It's a lock on the door. It's a security item. But I think,
You're talking about taking what we accrued in the account before we started the contract. That we have surplus funds for that.
correct. My position has always been, use it for some kind of security.
I think that's a board discussion more than.
That seems like a lot of number shuffling to get to the same.
It's not gonna get it to this, it's still gonna be a surplus. The question is, what do you do with it?
to check the math on it, but my quick calculation is that $60,000 adds about $8 to the dues,
How much?
about $8.
$8. Okay, the next one is, I think you put in there bookkeeping firm, I think I saw that in there. And then the raise for our employees,
It's in there.
what's in there? And then, repair person, you had that. I put that I wanted to add 35K to irrigation and landscaping budget. I don't know if that's, we talked about that already, so I think we're good on that. I don't think we need to increase. it.
Now I'm talking about $45,000 at the end of this year and quite a bit left over for next.
And then I saw that we did reduce the tree. I just feel like we spent a lot on tree removal this year, and you're saying that we're not.
How many trees do you think we're gonna remove after they've already been removed?
I don't know, man. These trees, just they seem to keep dying.
Yeah, they will, but when you take out 15 of them at a time, because you haven't done it for 12 years.
Yeah,
The odds of you having 15 next year is pretty slim.
okay.
I'm okay with that number if you guys are.
Well, yeah, and that's why you have the contingency also.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
the
Good.
contingency covers that kind of, oh my God, that should not happen.
And then IT budget, do we have a specific IT budget in there?
We don't,
Do we want to put one in?
you're
I
not
think
gonna
we should
afford
put
it.
it in the
So
security.
suck up a lot of stuff.
So
The
that-
average IT guy, I built $250 an hour.
I mean, I think we should budget for IT items that we purchase or no?
Not
We
gonna
we
purchase
don't have
it.
anything to buy, right?
Nope.
Because it's all in other
We have
areas.
Wi-Fi stuff for the irrigation system and some equipment we're gonna try and purchase very quickly here.
And then the last thing I had was an increase in the social fund. You had mentioned earlier, it's better to just pay for it than try to go around.
And I did increase the social fund.
So what's our social fund?
Right now it is up here in the 6,600, 6,400, right about this, okay? Last year we did $10,000,
Yeah.
okay? And this year we have done event expenses to $21,000
I love it.
because we made $19,000 on rentals.
So 21,000 rentals, we're gonna spend 8K on rent, that's like bouncy houses and things like
Bouncy
that.
houses, anything we rent, yeah.
DJ truck rental materials is not science, we have stuff, what materials?
Materials, anything we buy, like eggs, you know,
Okay.
whatever we do, ribbons, what we're doing, bake off, whatever we do.
And then services,
That,
what kind of things would that be?
that's DJs, Santa Bob, that kind of
Okay.
stuff.
Got it, I love it, it's great.
Mr.
I love it.
Frog for, Mr.
Okay, can I go eat now?
Yes.
Well.
I haven't eaten all day because I was working on this.
Roughly, what are you calculating?
Yeah, we did the
Sorry?
splash pad. You think,
It didn't calculate at the bottom because I saw the loop that I cost, but I'll fix it. Sometimes when I type over numbers, I typed over the formula. I put
So
in
what do
my
you think? What do you think, 60,000?
Yeah, that was good.
$50 a person.
$60,000 divided by
So it
1248.
is $50 a person.
Well,
$50 a house.
Divided by 12.
So
divided by 12.
Who knows?
Well, these are monthly numbers, not really.
Okay. That's $4 a month, so it's gonna go to $90. Yeah, so it's $4 a month.
$72.
68, that would put it up to 72.
So exactly what we talked
I say 75, so we can still, I'm comfortable with this.
$100,000, each of $5.
Yeah,
University.
I think.
John, you showed me that meeting.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, folks, I'm babbling. If there's anyone still listening, thank you for attending. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much. You've been with that.
Okay.
Can you email them to me?
Yeah,